Hey everyone, Internet PCS book reader here. Today I want to talk about The Balanced Brain, The Science of Mental Health by Camilla North. If you notice any difference with my sound or my current editing choices, I'm sorry, I just read this recently and usually I'll upload about the books I read in 3 months or so, but I forgot that Jacksepticeye's Tankmas is coming and I haven't really prepared a book related to mental health for the occasion. I know my channel most likely won't even count as a drop of water in the bucket for the annual charity event that is held by one of the biggest YouTubers that has basically been there since the creation of the platform, but I also don't want to use those as an excuse to not do anything. So while I'm finishing the video on Kentaro Miura / Arc of Berserk, I'll go ahead and start reading this book hoping that I can highlight it to maybe those who can use the book. The author of this book, Camilla North, is a researcher who lived in Cambridge and led the study of mental health neuroscience there. She lived there with her wife Rebecca and she opened the story with their wedding day at the end of 2019, which is such a great timing because a year after that is when lockdown hit and many people have to alter their plan because of it. But on a much smaller scale, the stress of the wedding and what could have gone wrong still raised her anxiety at the time, which thankfully everything went well and she got married in an outdoor area in England on a very rare sunny day. A top of the head moment in her life that she used as an example of what joy is like. Then the book starts even stronger with telling us the difference between two types of pleasure. Hedonia, which is a momentary happiness that people usually seek when they go after good food, traveling, or goes to any media escapism to seek for this hedonia. Then there's eudaimonia, the Greek way of life of seeking for contentment in their life, of being satisfied with life. We used to see hedonia and eudaimonia as separate because they used to be two different schools of thought in ancient Greek, but a lot of recent studies has shown how interconnected both of them can be and how much they have in common. Mental health is a very complex topic that a lot of people online are trying to grossly oversimplify because they cannot be bothered to learn more about the topic but wanted to have a say about it anyway, when it is a very dynamic and interactive thing where everything affects it. If it can affect people physically, it can affect people mentally, and if it didn't affect people physically, it can still affect people mentally. That's how wide the range if we're talking about mental health sincerely. And as with any health topic, there's always a lot of people who wanted to have a lot of say about it in the most unsincere way possible. Combine that with the fact that serious study of mental health study is late compared to physical health. We got a recipe for misinformation about causing a lot more distress. This book is a reminder of how necessary to have a healthy conversation surrounding mental health too, so we can learn more not just about what is causing it, but also its treatment and prevention. Yes, there is prevention on mental health issues. And through this book, the author will try to go to many research that have been done in neuroscience field and psychology field. It's not going to give you a one-size-fits-all solution because there's no such thing as do this one thing only and it will definitely solve your mental health issue because everyone's life and chemistry works differently. Instead, what the author wanted to look at is why something works for some and not for others and learn more on how diagnosis and treatment works in different kind of individual. To understand mental health, we first have to know our brain's relationship with pleasure and gain. We got different activities that give us pleasure, gaming, laughing with friends, having an orgasm, etc. Those all should give us pleasure so we seek more of it. But people with anhedonia usually get less or even no pleasure at all from these activities, and people with lower pain threshold often have more mental health issues, showing once more the connection between mind and body. In a healthier mental, surviving pain or a reduction of stress itself can give pleasure. The other cause is stress-induced analgesia. It's a survival mechanism that makes us temporarily forget about the pain we experience and keep going. It's because the reduction in stress releases an opioid chemical that gives us endorphins that can affect how we choose to live our lives. That's why stress-induced analgesia cannot be omitted when talking about mental health. Analgesia also mostly works in short periods of stress. When you're in chronic long-term pain instead of analgesia, you got hyperglycia, sensitivity to pain. On short term, it can work as a warning to not let the thing that hurts us again. But on a longer term, hyperglycia can alter our brain chemistry and give us pain signal to the injured part even when it's already healed. It's literally traumatized us enough to give us physical pain. That's why people who experience this are far more likely to develop mental health disorder. And that's still talking about pleasure that are induced by pain, which of course the author did not suggest to always seek pain for pleasure because there are activities that are for pleasure. This might be the best modern book to teach about the detail of mental health and studies, at least from the view that I've read this year. It mentioned in page 17 that correlation is not causation, which if you've watched any of Dr. Mike's video, you might have heard of them. It means that because you saw few similar patterns does not mean that it is the cause of it. And if a lot of people when talking about even physical health does this a lot, of course it's even worse when they're talking about mental health. If something's work for you and it works for a few of the friends and families that you have, that doesn't mean that it will work for strangers you interact with on the internet. For example, when the author studied brain pattern on pleasure using modern tools like PET and fMRI scan to see if drinking milkshake did something for the brain, the same pattern in an area kept getting highlighted, which indicated that it might be because milkshake gave pleasure and reduced stress, and headline will pop up about this once the paper was released. But when she talked with her friends who are studying brain chemistry after a tumor where the highlighted part are missing because it's been taken out, the patients are still experiencing the same pleasure from drinking milkshake. So maybe milkshake is not the answer to happiness. Maybe it's just happy people who are already happy felt more happy when they drink milkshake. Correlation is not causation. The thing that we got from these studies that are causation are the various spots in our brain that lights up when triggered by pleasure that are given the name hedonistic hotspots. Another of these hotspots before opioids that we've mentioned before is endocannabinoids. Yes, in case if you're wondering, cannabis the drug is named after this hotspot because it lights up the same area of the brain, the same with opioid as a drug. Unfortunately, those two can be very addictive and people have died from overdosing them, which is why these are not the solution that we're looking for most likely, especially opioids who I have covered this year going through the Secular Dynasty book. But again, these are artificially stimulated opioids. There are ways to naturally produce them that doesn't rely on addictive drugs. There's study that shows that watching comedies in a social environment with friends and laughing together with them also light up our opioids receptor. And laughter is contagious and bond people together that creates a stronger social connection, so it has short-term benefit for our mental state and long-term benefit for our social relationship. What makes it tricky and impossible for any generalized treatment is that what likes this hotspot for each individual can be very different because it depends on their likes and dislikes, and then if doing or even just seeing what you like up your hotspot, experiencing what you dislike did the opposite, it light up the cold spot in your brain. And their combination that changes how you navigate your like and dislike to gain pleasure is key to mental health. The problem is that anhedonia that we mentioned at the start, which used to just means losing the ability to experience pleasure, now its definition also means losing interest in previously pleasurable activity. And not only in the worst state of anhedonia, a person's mental health are easier to get worse, but its ability to lose interest only makes a person like and dislike even more uniquely their own as they grow up, making it harder to study them. Thankfully, while like and dislike vary to each individual, the reason why people get pleasure from their likes are usually the same, their current state and the expectation of later state. For example, if you're really hungry, you had expectation for what you eat and how it will make you feel, so it gave you pleasure. But if you're already full, eating more will only give you pain, and that's why your body state is important for mental health. Just as the most basic example, if you're hungry, it is easier for you to get irritated. That's why the word hungry entered the lexicon. Of course, context differs depending on the situation. It's not like you will definitely get angry because you're hungry. It's just one of many factors that affect you. Besides your hunger, your immune system and your gut biome also affect your mental health and illness. So does your heart. If your heartbeat was increased, whether it's through internal or external factor, it will affect how you interpret what you're experiencing. The point is that your body really affects your mental health. That's one of the reasons why when you're sick, you have flu or some cold, your mental health just dip along with your physical health. There's a lot of example of body to mind, but we also have more on mind to body, and the book doesn't only give us the cliche example of phantom pain, where people still feel their limbs after losing them, but even smaller things like how your hands feel hot or your bladder feel like it's about to burst when you're nervous, etc. The book also finally gave me a name for this symptom, functional neurological disorders. Then our brain also have what is called reward prediction error, where we are surprised at experiencing something out of the norms. For example, I usually eat on the same restaurant Monday to Friday, so much so that on Friday, they often gave me freebies like extra food or drink. It gave me positive prediction error and gave me pleasure. But sometimes I went there too late because of work and they're already out of everything, and that gave me a negative prediction error and it always sucks. Those things affected my emotion and my mood in short term, but when we're talking about mental health, we are often talking about experiencing those negative emotions in longer periods of time. Of course, mental health is not the absence of negative emotion. Mental health is more about the ability to experience negative emotion, but always able to bounce back to a relatively positive mental state. And usually when someone is in a bad place mentally, they have a more negative expectation about the world, and feeling temporarily good just doesn't affect their bad mood. Besides hedonia besides hedonia and eudaimonia, the book also tackles other key to mental health that are often missed because Aristotle didn't say anything about them back then: motivation or drive. Dopamine, which neurologist Carlson found that it was a neurotransmitter, is later used by Oliver Sacks to treat the patient of sleeping sickness that are incurable, and it also gave people with Parkinson's disease the motivation to act. One of the dangers of Parkinson's disease before it took away movement and more is that it killed the nerve cell in the brain that produce dopamine, so it took away the will to act for its victim, giving them apathy, and dopamine can help give them the drive to go on. The first part of the book explains a lot of these technicalities of how mental health works, and it can be hard to go through, but they're necessary to go to the next part of the book, where the author moves to everything that works in improving mental health, everything, including placebos. Homeopathy, for example, which is alternative medicine, works for some people, but when it was clinically tested and compared to placebo, it always works just about as effective as the placebo. But here's the thing, placebo is very effective. It is unfortunate that people underestimate placebos because it's one of the most effective tools that our brain have. There are even people who feel insulted or using it as an insult when one matter is that it works for them. And when placebo works, it can still work even after they realize that it is just placebo. It is so powerful that even if you don't absolutely believe on the treatment, the knowledge that there are people who the treatment works for can be enough to give the placebo effect. Of course, there are some people who then use it to sell snake oil, but thankfully most treatments that are not dependent on only placebo effect work better than placebo effect, because they also have their placebo effect on top of the clinical effect. So if treatment like homeopathy don't work for you, you can always leave it for something else, because statistically placebo only works for a small percentage of the population. Then there's of course antidepressants. L-dopa that was mentioned to help save the patient of sleeping sickness and people with Parkinson's disease is one of these. And don't let people shame you for using them if it works. It's just to artificially give some chemicals in your brain. Protein shake that people like me drinks help my workout in the same way. It's artificial protein. The book gives a lot of this antidepressant and what chemical they produce and how it works in your body, and also how they don't work. Antidepressants are useful because the brain chemistry of a person with depression usually interpret every experience in a negative light even when it is a positive experience, and antidepressant helps them to see things in a more positive light. It's because sometimes people with depression lack some chemical that their brain should produce, either dopamine, adrenaline, or serotonin, but just like a lot of drugs, antidepressants don't always work. And if you're not comfortable with antidepressant for one of other reason, there are the recreational ones. Coffee, tobacco, and beer are included in this category. Then there are also cannabis and psychedelic. But there are dangers to almost all of them. And other like cannabis are a bit late to go into research either because government banned them, even for research, or there's just no funding for them because of a lack of public interest. And for those that wanted to avoid all that mess, there's always psychotherapy. Meditation, cognitive behavior therapy, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, they also often go in hand with psychological therapy that can even affect your physical health. The book goes in depth about all of this, how to do them, the challenges, the benefit, and in some cases like mindfulness, the danger. Yes, mindfulness can actually irritate some people and further stress them. The more you know, I guess. And since we're talking about practices that you can do to train your perspective, there's also the mentally healthy lifestyle. Diet and exercise. Now for diet, there have been no study that shows causality in humans between their mental health and what they eat, so a lot of it can be just placebo, and that's before eating disorder entered the conversation, which makes it a whole lot of messy. But even you are not interested in diet, exercise have many more positive sides to them, since during and after exercise, your body releases a number of neurotransmitters and hormones that is beneficial for mental health. It can even, for reasons that are still being studied, give mental resilience where we can bounce back from negative feeling easier. Of course, a lot of this needed a lot more effort and motivation that lasted long term. So if you had anhedonia, fatigue, or apathy, it is harder option to stick with them. But there's also the option to fix your sleep schedule because there's also a ton of benefits for that. Nowadays, it feels like bad news are anywhere and people online just hates more easier because of our post-capitalistic era, I guess. So the world can be really rough for our mental health in so many ways. And while there's no one-size-fits-all cure that everyone can use that will definitely fix them, and there will never be one because those are just marketing jargons that snake oil men like to use to sell their products. But now there are so much option that we have, and our understanding of mental health is only getting better and better, and the treatment is only getting better and better with people like the author and many more is still studying further about mental health, even as I am making this video and you are watching it now. While some of these options might not be affordable for some people, there are no charitable places like Samaritan and Crisis Text Line that offer free mental health communication that can help you navigate any question you have about your own issues. Yes, those two foundations focus more in US, UK, Canada, and Ireland, and their first world country, while I'm an Indonesian who are currently working in Malaysia, and they don't benefit me whatsoever. But I like to think that as a foundation like them grow, hopefully we can either learn from there and make our own version of it by studying what they do, or maybe they'll grow big enough to help create a more empathetic world. I give this book a 5. What do you think? Let me know if I missed anything, so leave your thoughts in the comment below and subscribe to the channel. That's about it. See ya.